Hey everybody, Lewis here. I am joined here with Bob Bocock. Bob and I met while I was in East Palestine about a week and a half ago. As you all know, I'll be back in East Palestine in a couple days here as well. I wanted to talk to Bob about some recent events going on in town. We'll start off first with the temporary dam that overflowed a second time in the last week, basically, it seems like. We saw an interview that you did and you kind of explained the whole situation going on there as out of control and haphazard, to use your words. Do you want to expand on what you mean by that and talk a little bit about some of the potential implications of what we saw happening there?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I also went to the meeting that was conducted by the state Department of Environmental Protection and the EPA, and it turned into a circus for you know no better words to describe it. And it's unfortunate because the representative from the railroad got up and he literally said, "This is the worst I've ever seen." Well, when you have one of the wealthiest railroads in the world standing up and saying this is the worst I've ever seen. And then you see a response where they actually hire contractors to go out to people's homes and spray disinfectant to try to cover up or mask the smell of the chemicals. That's pretty pathetic. It's one of those kinds of things where you have these people who are claiming to be professionals going out in the world with their little handheld devices, you know, trying to sniff out levels that would be suffocation levels, as opposed to carcinogenic levels, and it's just placation. They think that they can come in and just mow these people down, and then baffle them with bullshit. It's frankly it's frustrating. There's the treatment system. I was challenged by a reporter out at a press conference last Friday, and he literally said, "Oh, you're wrong. The state took us through the whole system, and they're scouring the bottom, and they're airstripping in those tanks over there." And I said, "Wow, I don't know how they would do that, but let me go look." And I walked over and I took a look, and the top of the tanks were all wide open. So if they were doing airstripping in open, vessels like that, it's just ridiculous. And we're making suggestions. The good news is I believe the EPA is listening to the suggestions,
Mhm.
but don't anyone be fooled that the EPA has all the answers and that this is going to somehow get solved by the EPA. The example I use is the Lehigh train derailment in Leroy, New York, where it's been almost 50 years now, and they still have 2 years to get their plans in. So the EPA has very, very limited ability to actually enforce anything.
Right. And something, with this too, I did some digging into the area around where a lot of the kind of aeration we were seeing going on is, where we actually spoke when we met in person, and the water kind of overflowing there.
Yeah,
That area is seemingly right on the line of being on top of where the groundwater supply is for
worse
the.
yet, I don't know whether you've seen it, but if
Mhm,
you go between the groundwater wells
mhm,
and this creek, they've
mhm.
installed a monitoring well.
Right.
It's physically there. I've seen it. There are
Mhm.
supposed to be four. I've found two.
Okay.
They're not going to give Bob a map.
Right.
So I've had to physically go out and find them on my own. They flood those out.
Right.
Now they're sealed and they're capped and all the whatnot, but that's freshly disturbed dirt. It shouldn't be subject to a contamination situation like that, where
Right.
they're basically flooding it out and blowing it out. It's funny. I sent the photograph to other experts. I'm a water guy.
Right.
I know guys that are super. I had the gentleman out there who basically babysat the piece of equipment that Texas A&M and Carnegie Mellon had in town
Mhm.
for 10 years. He fine tuned that and wrote the standards and specifications for its use. And he said, "Boy, if you ever want to cover up, this is how you do it."
Yeah, not great. We also had news this week that residents have been hammering this point home about dioxin testing not being done. It seems like dioxin testing is going to be done now, but that it's going to be done by the contractors hired by Norfolk Southern. That seems to be like again another example of Norfolk Southern policing themselves. Here, they caused the problem, and they're the same ones being called to go test for this sort of stuff. What are your thoughts on that whole process going down with dioxin testing, at least being done now, but likely being done by folks that are not going to be trusted by the local residents?
Right. Their trust is gone. They've got a long way to go to earn back any kind of trust whatsoever. And it's unfortunate because, sometimes things can be done well. The dioxins, quite frankly, I think that, much like it's funny, they put up that map and they show all those green dots and they say, look at the screening levels, the screening levels. That's a very legal term in the science world. It means that they sniffed and they didn't see it at a level that their piece of equipment could do it at. They didn't do any actual testing. We measured this chemical at this location is the way to say it legally and scientifically. Saying screening is pissing in the wind. It's literally, it's fraud. And so the situation with the dioxin testing is they're going to say, oh, it's Jim Bob's barbecue. It's we're not sure where that came from. So they've already got a laundry list of excuses before they even submit their plan.
Right. And that's what they were saying, before. At one point, the EPA was like, well, we don't have a baseline on where the dioxins were before this, so that's why we're not testing them. That was the initial excuse. And to your point, that is very likely what they're going to say is this came from this. Like, frankly, I don't care what the dioxin levels were before the derailment. If the dioxin levels are too high now where they're going to cause problems for folks, these folks deserve to know about it so that they can at least have the right information to be able to weigh their options. So many thing after thing after thing here, whether it be the air tests being done in homes, which I've been doing some investigating into. We're getting ready to release a piece on that. The air testing outside of, in the community that you're mentioning, the potential testing in the water wells, all sorts of things are kind of going on here. I want to get to two more things with you, if that's okay. So we've got reports from residents that we talked to of dead animals. One woman that we did an interview with, her and her husband have rabbits. Two of their rabbits have now died. This is more recently. We also had reports of dead deer a couple days ago. 3 dead deer. Yep, you saw the same thing down near the water.
Yeah.
Can you, obviously, I don't expect you to know exactly why this is happening, but in your expertise, do you have any thoughts on why we're starting to see more dead animals at this point, on top of the already, we had dead fish all over the place. We've had a gentleman that Jordan spoke with has dead foxes. Can you talk a little bit about why you think some of this might be happening?
Sure. This was a train derailment. It was an unplanned, catastrophic event where things came out of those rail cars in pulses. And so they're still pulsing around the environment. And so you could actually have, captured gases in soils that, kind of come back out. All this aeration that they're doing is very disruptive. And I don't know that it's designed to actually treat the problem. I think it's designed to conceal the problem. And so what they're doing basically is coming out in pulses. So much like the animals, the cats, the rabbits, the chickens, they could have experienced a cloud. I don't think that those clouds exist in enough quantity to continue to kill animals, but I think that there was a time frame where they did kill the animals. And then it's the same thing, maybe the deer were at the river right at the time that a big old slug was going by and they drank it. I mean, we just won't know. I will tell you that if this is the worst that the railroad's ever seen, and they're treating it by going into a home and disinfecting it, okay, they might have a $8,000 piece of equipment, but this one I was born with. And I'll tell you what, if you're in there trying to mask the smell by spraying a little Febreze around, you're covering up the best instrument we got, which is our nose, which means they're smelling the chemical. If they're smelling what smells like burn, that's called dioxin. I mean, people were showing me, laminated pieces of wood that, white, and you could literally wipe the black off. Come on. Yeah. That's where that's where they should be testing, not next to, Jim Bob's barbecue. That's just ridiculous.
Right. Agreed. And we'll link, I've interviewed 2 separate residents who brought up the fact that these cleaners came to their home that you referenced here. So we've done a lot more digging into that. We'll make sure that there are links to those videos below for folks to check out, because frankly, it was insulting to these folks to have a cleaning company showed up hired by the railroad company that are not hazmat certified to come do these cleanings, and essentially spraying chemicals meant to kill germs in a hospital on top of chemicals. That this germ cleaner is not going to do anything to clean up the potential contaminants as a result of the derailment in their home at all. Also,
they still think it was COVID.
Right. And I mean, frankly,
Yeah.
Yes, I mean frankly that some of the folks who went to the clinic and whatnot are being told like, oh, these rashes that you're getting, oh, it's probably from the stress. It's probably from the stress, not the fact that a third or a half of the town is getting rashes essentially from the folks that I'm talking with, and they're going to the clinic being set up by the state that isn't really providing any actual medical treatment, any providing any real testing or anything like that. And these folks are actually being gaslit into being told, at least in a case of a resident that I spoke with, that the rash is probably from the stress. Ridiculous to me when all this is going on. But lastly, I want to get to Norfolk Southern is actually now digging up the soil that they haphazardly just buried a bunch of contaminants underneath the rail line when they rushed to get their train back open again so that they could get the money flowing. Once again, they're now digging up one train line at a time. For folks who don't know, there are two lines that go through town, so they can keep one open while this process is going on. This morning, I got a bunch of texts from different residents saying that the smell is back and worse than ever. The smell is even potentially a little bit different this time. A resident, Jenna Catone, that I spoke with, we'll hopefully have her on at some point again soon here, said that she had a really bad headache this morning, nose issues, sore throat again. And Norfolk Southern has actually reached out to people potentially to offer some sort of relocation again, although we're kind of confirming how good this sort of relocation is going to be, or if it's reimbursements or what it might be. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you think the potential effects of digging up this new soil from underground might be, the pros and cons of the situation, and just kind of explain it as you know it?
Well, clearly it's got to be removed. Okay. And you need to treat it as a hazardous material situation, not only from the perspective of, A, what they bury there, but what it turned into and what was buried there from the time before. I mean, it's like they literally, if you understand what you just said, it's they had a hazardous material spill cleanup, and now they have to clean up the other set of tracks because they contaminated that set of tracks when they dug up the material on this side of the tracks. This is what we mean by the fact that they're just creating a bigger problem. You know, I told you, somebody reached out to me and said, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's call the Gulf oil spill a 10. Let's look at Exxon Valdez as an 8. Where does this one fall in all your investigations around the world? I says it was a 2 that they turned into an 8 by their response.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just been it's kind of a pathetic situation.
Absolutely. Well, I won't take any more of your time, Bob. Thanks
No
so
problem.
much for joining again, and maybe we'll cross paths again here soon. Again, I'm going to be back on the ground in East Palestine starting March 13th. Thanks so much for your time, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.